goes, which is now, your faces won't be shown.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Thank you. Okay. It's July 8th, 2025, uh, Tuesday in most parts of the world, I think. I don't know. Not sure exactly what day it is everywhere. Um, I'm in Stockholm, so it's 7 p.m. My usual time is 10 a.m. So I did get the time switch right. Uh, and so we're going to start with a 20-minute period of meditation and then some reflections of some kind on Dharma and recovery. So just settling into your meditation posture, whatever is most helpful for you, whatever way of sitting or lying down. You can also walk or stand in the traditional four postures. Usually people on Zoom are either sitting or walking, or sorry, lying down. Okay, and you can begin by closing your eyes or just lowering your gaze and turning the attention inward. It can be helpful just to notice how the body is feeling right now. Starting with just energy. Are you alert or drowsy, relaxed or tense? And then more subtly, just the variety of sensations in the body. When we scan the body, we find that at any moment there are many different sensations. The body is not one thing. The body is a collection of things. We can sense that just through the different feelings that arise, that show up, that come and go. And we feel the breath moving in the body. There's that rhythm, the flow of breath in and out. Mindfulness of breathing, the simplest of activities, the simplest thing to pay attention to. And the mind often looks for something more complicated. thoughts. Or we can be easily drawn away from the breath at first. Our practice is to keep returning, coming back with kindness, gently. But with persistence, patience. Takes great patience to work with the disturbances of mind. To understand that this is not me, that these are not my thoughts, simply the activities of mind, habits, conditioned behaviors. Understanding this helps us to be more patient and gentle with ourselves as we persist in returning to the breath, to the present moment. If we observe the contents of thought, they may reveal certain aspects of our mind, certain aspects of our personality. And this is the level of personal insight. Not perhaps as profound as the deeper insights, but also quite valuable and meaningful, useful to see the fears, the desires, the resentments, the repeating stories that appear in our minds that we identify with. And to realize that they are just constructions created through past experiences, past ideas, through tendencies. Each of us has different personality tendencies. Again, they They do not belong to us. They appear in our minds, in our experience. When we can see them as objects of mind, this can help us to disidentify with these experiences, just words and images passing through the mind. The Dharma reminds us that none of these things are impermanent, that none of these things are permanent. None of them are satisfactory. They will not lead to any resolution. None of them identify us or belong to us. And so again, we're inspired to let go. To release into the calm of stillness, equanimity. Just enjoy the present moment, breathing in, breathing out. guess it looks like people can hear that. I just heard a vague little,
It was fine. It sounded like my outdoor chimes.
okay, good. Yeah, I used to use these when I taught mindfulness for mindful schools in the elementary schools, and the little kids would like that little sound. All right, nice to just sit. I uh, sometimes have something prepared, and today I didn't have anything particularly prepared. Some things on my mind, but something I said or it's two things I said when I was guiding the meditation seemed like a kind of worthy topic to pick up. And when I referred to the personal insights, whereas there's a more, Buddhist or universal insight of Buddhism, I think it's useful to kind of parse them out and reflect on them. And, you know, when we talk about Buddhism, there are three key insights that I referred to: the impermanence, the unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha, not self. So dukkha, or anicca, dukkha, anatta in Pali. And those are, when we're talking about Buddhism, that's really what we're talking about. So in you don't see the Buddha talking about personal insight, really. But certainly in Western Buddhism, Western Buddhists, being more um, aligned with Western psychology and the idea of the ego and looking at our makeup, our psychological makeup, uh, that, for anybody who's been through therapy, um, has kind of gone through some bit of a process of sort of looking at their past and how they kind of, their personality was formed or deformed, as the case may be. And so it's almost inevitable, I think, that when we sit down to meditate and we become aware of our thoughts, that we're going to think about ourselves, our personality, and um, and try to solve ourselves, right? Like, why am I like this, or how can I be, happier or different, or what's wrong with me, or maybe even what's right with me, but just sort of this personal exploration that naturally unfolds from seeing when we start to observe thoughts, right? This is a a normal and kind of, I mean, I think really important part of meditation is to be able to separate or reflect on what's arising in the mind, the thoughts, and initially in this way, in this personal way. And I think that so there's that, and then but that's not what the practice is supposed to be. I would say, I'm putting that in quotes, that when you approach Buddhism in a traditional way, that you're asked to reflect on and be aware of the impermanent nature of the thoughts, not on the personal nature, just the impermanent, just the fact that they're coming and going, that they are unsatisfactory, that they don't lead to any resolution, that they actually cause you suffering, psychological suffering, and that they aren't self, that they don't belong to you, that they don't define you. And those are the key insights that we're meant to develop in Buddhism. But I think it's important to have a balance between those two. If we approach our practice as simply another form of therapy, then we're really missing the deeper wisdom and the deeper potential for letting go that uh, becomes available when we start to, separate, step away from them as personal and see them as in these universal ways. So it's really important not to get stuck just in that work, right? Because which in kind of a 12-step, version of that would be just doing inventory all the time, right? Um, and there's also a risk in skipping over them and just trying to see the dukkha, anicca, anatta, see or the anicca, I should say first, so impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self, and and, and try to just sort of jump into that, I'll say, higher form of insight and relate to everything is just empty. So I don't need to look at it or process it or do anything about it or deal with it, right? Because it's all empty, it's all impermanent. It's not me, it's not mine. And that's, can become a spiritual bypass. So you're probably, most of you are familiar with this term, the idea that we use spiritual ideas to uh, skip over dealing with psychological problems. And so this is, relates directly to addiction because there are lots of people who get into Buddhism and try to use it as a spiritual bypass, who are people who are addicts of one kind or another, or have some kind of, it doesn't even have to be an addiction per se, but since that's sort of the general, uh, identification of this group, that's a good area to look at because we know what's the like key thing that holds addiction in place. It's denial, right? Or it's the key thing that keeps us from changing or from dealing with it. And denial, we deny it, and then we don't look. Oh, that's all empty. Oh, I'm just going to meditate and transcend all this. And that's certainly my story, my own practice. I started doing Buddhist practice before I got sober and thought I was going to sort of solve my life's problems by getting enlightened, whatever that is. And that allowed me to just ignore a lot. And this came up for me actually after I'd been sober quite a long time, and really even when I'd been doing this work, uh, when I was struggling with depression, and it was actually soon after my first book was published, and I won't even get into why you know why that happened then at that moment, but I started looking at this book called The Mindful Way Through Depression. Uh, and initially I was like, well, this is just like mindfulness 101. I know all this. I don't need this. But as I looked more closely at it, I recognized that I did have this habit of not really looking at how my thoughts were creating the depression, how the direct connection between the thoughts and the idea that I could break that connection. In other words, I could intervene where the thoughts were triggering feelings by using mindfulness. And it was like, I think I already knew that, a long time ago, but somehow it kind of like slipped my mind over the years. Um, because again, when you meditate a lot, after a while, you got to get sick of the thoughts. and you lose interest in them, and you just kind of like turn away from them, which is, I think, eh, to a great extent, that's a good idea. You know, there's a, that can be very useful because you're just like, as the term the Buddha uses, disenchantment. You stop being so fascinated with your own ego, maybe. And if you have mood disorders or mental illness, such as some of us have, that also might mean that you're you're not really seeing how your mind states are arising. You might be going, oh, this is unpleasant, but you're not really seeing that, like, actually, you can intervene in that. So, I find this, an important balance to keep between, you know, a constant self-obsession with my own thoughts and just trying to ignore them altogether, uh, and transcend them. Um, and this, so I think this is, I mean, it does point to a middle way, right? A key Buddhist idea that I think is a really good one for all of us to keep in mind. There's such a tendency for us to latch on to ideas or behaviors, attitudes, and sort of, you know, that becomes the thing, becomes the lens through which we're seeing everything. It's, you know, this black and white sort of thing. And when you're having one of those moments, when you think you've got it all nailed down, is a really good time to ask yourself, is there another way to look at this? Or is there some imbalance in this? Potentially, am I missing something? And I try to do this, I mean, where a lot of my own suffering, and I think suffering for a lot of those of us, at least in the US right now, is our political situation and the way our country is being run. And I have to step away from that. I have to get a balance with that. You guys hear me talk about, like, getting a longer view, like, oh, in the time of the Buddha, there were also kings who were oppressors, and there were wars, and there was racism with the caste system. And okay, so we're not in some unique historical moment. Yeah. So that for me is like getting a middle way, and a balancing view of, like, oh my God, the world I live in this moment is so bad. It's the worst thing ever. It's like, no, it's just, the same as it ever was, as the talking heads would say, greed, hatred, and delusion. Of course, I'm sorry I flipped right over to that from my, we don't really need to go into that. But again, I think this idea of a middle way, and what our relationship is to our experience, is really uh, important to keep in mind. Um, I'm not sure if this relates, but it's the next thing that comes up from my mind as I'm sitting here after, a few nights of trying to sleep with jet lag, and it's just really interesting to me to be lying down trying to sleep, and your body doesn't go to sleep. Like, as I'm sure all of you have traveled at times, and just sometimes, the body, your inner clock gets thrown off, and the body just doesn't want to shut down. And and to see in the past, pretty long ago, that would really disturb me. I would get really restless with that. And one of the things I've learned is that I can just lie here. And it is one of those things where I feel grateful for meditation because I'm lying there and it's not that I'm disturbed about anything. It's not that there's some thoughts that are keeping me awake. It's just, oh, there's just this energy and mindfulness of the body. I just lie there and I feel, oh, there's this energy in the body and there's feelings. And then, the mind wanders, but the mind isn't really troubled. And I just know how, like that, if I have this desire, if I have this idea, so here I'll try to bring it back to the middle way. If I have this idea that I need to be asleep, if I don't sleep, it's going to be really bad. That one, when and of course it happens when you know that you're going to have to get up in the morning or something. Fortunately, I'm on vacation. I don't have to get up. But, that causes a problem. Whereas if you're just like, well, this is just unpleasant, it's not bad, then I can just lie here and tolerate it. And then eventually some sleep comes when it's ready. But, that way in which the mind wants to latch on to things. Um, I said it at the beginning of the sitting too. Um, and I do think that sometimes the beginning of a sitting is a good moment to check in with yourself and see what's the first thing that shows up in your mind, you know? Just that first thing, oh, because I think that's very often like a reminder of like, oh, that's really on my mind. Like my sitting this morning, the first thing that came up in my mind was, um, bad things, the bad things that are happening. And I was like, oh God, no. And it was very telling because I was like, oh yeah, it's like oftentimes in meditation, the things that we've been trying to ignore or sort of are going on in the background, they come up and they appear in the foreground. And and in that way, I think meditation becomes useful as a form of inventory uh, in, uh, in the 12-step sense of like, oh, this is the stuff that's going on in my mind. This is what I need to deal with. What am I going to do to deal with this? You know, um, and you know, there isn't always something to do literally. You know, it can be that the thing to do is to let go or to take a different attitude, or turn the mind, or just focus on the breath. You know, um, there's such a tendency for us to try to solve problems, to try to fix things, to try to fix ourselves, to try to fix the world, to try to fix the drip in the sink, like what happens when we just say, I don't have to solve this. Just like lying there and not being able to fall asleep. I don't have to solve this. I don't have to make myself fall asleep. I don't have to, solve the world's problems. And I can't solve the world's problems. I mean, as I'm saying all that, I'm thinking, I don't know what the mind of an addict is, but I think I somewhat have the mind of an addict when some of the things that the big book of AA talks about, the way we try to take on the world and feel like that we've got this unique responsibility, or that we, sit around complaining about the world. That's the one that's like the guy who retires to Florida and spends his time on the beach complaining about the world, right? and then starts drinking again. I think that's how that story goes. But uh, yeah, so one of my ways of finding balance, part of my middle way is, oh, I'm an old person and I'm going to die before all of this is solved. And that's okay, It's like I don't, that's just the way it is, you know. And it's definitely deflates the bubbles. Like, oh, I'm not that important. The world is going to go on without me, you know. Ah, yes. Well, I this is my you know, not entirely grounded. Um, it's hard for me to claim to be jet lagged after however many days, 3 days or something. But this is what I have to offer today. So I hope it's of some help. But I'll be happy to hear other people's thoughts or reflections. Thank you. Oh, well, there you go, Pam. Hi.
Good morning, and thank you for your talk. It led my mind in many directions, and uh, I'm grateful for that. Um, I think one thing I've learned in AA is to listen to the messenger and to listen to someone who has more sobriety than I do, and often somebody who has one day, just to hear the human experience and get some perspective. But I have a 103-year-old friend,
Mm,
and in the last few months, I've often spoken to him about the national political situation.
mm,
And, he's seen it all, and he was in World War II, and I mean, and
right.
everything. And he had said a lot, but basically it has boiled down to something that's become kind of a mantra with me, with me now and it's middle way stuff. Um, Pay attention, but don't panic.
Yeah.
And I can apply that to the everything that's going on, but also in my own everyday life is don't disconnect, pay attention, think about it, and don't panic. Based on a lot of it is based on just what Leo has said to me as a 103-year-old person
Mm,
who has experienced life. I figure if he's at 103, if he can say don't panic, then I'm going to believe it. Um, Also, you mentioned, I'll just say this quickly, is I think you mentioned asking about where is this showing up in my body and
mm,
spiritual bypass. And in the last year or two, I was like dealing with my mom's estate and my daughter's second pregnancy. I've got this as a good, good alcoholic. I've got this. And I developed um, a spasm in my shoulder that would not go away. Acupuncture, everything,
mm,
until I realized that I needed to uh, get real and maybe shed a few tears about some things and
mm.
let go of some things, and it eased. It started to ease. So I try to ask myself, what's going on in my body because it tells me that something's up before my mind does. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Pam. Yeah. Mm. Um, there was something you said that made me think something, but I'll just let Eric talk. Go ahead, Eric. Hi, nice to see you.
Hi, Kevin. Good to see everyone. Um, it was just so poignant and topical for what I'm going through right now, is that just feeling really off about a lot of things. I was in a meditation on Saturday and it was an extended meditation, and a thought came through my head that it was, you think you disappoint people. And it's really was like a gut punch to me, which I am aware of my tendencies for perfectionism and people pleasing. Um, and it wasn't that it was a loud voice or anything, and it was actually gentle in its delivery, but it forced me to feel like I needed to pay attention to that. And everything you were talking about today is that I'm an introvert and I have a difficult time expressing my emotions and my feelings. And so this is the practice for me, is just to try and externally process, is to just talk about these things in a meeting. And I've been going to meetings, but I've been quiet because I don't always know how to fix this. I want to feel better. And something you said in a meeting a long time ago was that, it was a 5-step thing. It was, this is how my body feels. Um, it's uncomfortable. I'm in a bad mood. Um, I forget the fifth now. It's natural and it's not about me. That's what
Mm,
I don't know
right.
if you remember saying that or if that's something you said multiple times, but it really stuck with me to just try and remind myself that of the impermanence, that, it's not about me. That seems like the important part of it, is that I will get through this, and I will. And I love the fact that I don't think about a drink now when I get into these places. And these
Mm,
problems for me seem insignificant, but with my partner, and I recognize that when I get in these, I get stuck, my energy is glitchy, and it's difficult for my partner to be around me, so we're having issues there. And then it starts hitting on all these buttons that I'm already kind of obsessing on. So I don't know the answers today, and I'm tired because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and
mm,
so all of these things are resonating.
mm.
With me. Maybe I don't have to do anything today other than come here and talk a little bit about it so that I can feel a little bit better about myself. So thanks for letting me share.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Sweet. Um, I see. Yeah, I was just thinking this about Spirit Rock. I will not be teaching this Friday for Spirit Rock. Walt Opie is covering for me because that would be happening at 3 o'clock in the morning here. And although I might be awake, I not planning on it. So yeah, you should 6 o'clock Pacific time on the Spirit Rock website this Friday. I recommend it. If you don't know Walt, he's a lovely teacher. Um, oh, Flo, great. Hi.
Hi, Kevin. Um, Having technical problems. Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
Um, I really think that this is such a timely topic today, so thank you for taking time on your vacation to still hold space. I wrote a lot down from the talk, and it is timely because this past weekend my family was visiting, and they don't come visit often. And my parents are in their 70s, but my mother is deteriorating pretty fast.
Mm,
Um, Self-admitted alcoholic, so I'm not labeling her. But she just kind of has given up on life, I can tell.
mm,
And so I found myself a lot trying to use the tools of mindfulness and realizing like I can't control the outcome or what she chooses to do or not to do. And um it's hard to watch, but it's also I'm very grateful for all the lessons and the tools that impermanence and the ability to be present, and not swept away by the grief.
mm,
Um, and then you had touched on the John Kabat-Zinn book as well, the Mindfulness Way Through Depression, and that was my first Buddhist book so many years ago because depression runs in my family,
mm,
and that was the first book that I ever picked up. Because I just wanted to try to look at other ways to help my depression. So I thought that was really interesting. And um, the other thing is that early in my recovery, I did use recovery as a way, as a self improvement project. And I think I read that in one of your books, to not use it necessarily as a self improvement project because it's always never ending.
yeah.
And that's been really hard to change. Um, so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your words and your time today. So that's
Thanks, Flo. Nice to see you. Yeah, I mean, I think we do improve, whatever that means. But in fact, I was noting my own improvements. Yes, yeah, I think I'm easier to get along with these days. That first time, first time my wife and I ever traveled together was 32 years ago, and there were some fights, and I was not always, you know, uh, the nicest person. Monica, well, she can be the closing.
Oh, how about that? Um, so last week, I got the word that my sponsee had passed away.
Oh, God.
It is so interesting. Um, it wasn't like totally unexpected, but he had seemed to rally, and it seemed like he might survive. He had congenital heart failure, so
Oh,
they had all kinds of interventions. He hadn't been out of the hospital for 5 months.
oh
But it
gosh.
seemed like he was rallying and he was going to learn to walk again and all these other things. And then he had a seizure. I guess it was a
Oh,
seizure and
God.
he passed
Oh,
away. But um, I it was so interesting because what I had to do, people were always asking me what happened, da da da, like um and I finally had to take a break because my brain turned to mush. And then I had that little guilt of turning to the middle way. I have, and that's just, more work that needs to be done. But the middle way does save me in these moments of people passing away, traveling.
mm,
I've recently been on the Odyssey myself, and um not getting enough sleep, but trying to be okay with it, and things like that. um so it did help me quite a bit, and I'm glad you said this was the topic today, was something I probably needed to hear more about. In recovery, I think we talk more about being in the moment, and it took me years to learn to do that anyway. And now that I spend more time in the moment, I had my sobriety birthday.
oh,
And somebody else
congratulations.
had to tell me about it. I had
Right,
17
right.
I had 17 years.
Oh, very good.
And
Yeah,
but somebody else had to tell me
right,
because
right.
I'm staying in the I so that told me I'm staying in the moment.
Yeah,
So um more. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not ready for enlightenment, or
you never
but
know.
I never know. But I mean, I'm not that. I don't think that's, I'm imperfect, and there's impermanence. But thank you for the topic.
Thanks. I'm sorry to hear about your sponsee. That sounds rough. Oof. Hmm. Well, I was thinking as you were talking about one thing I think I read from Joseph Goldstein at one time, which is he was talking about the middle way, and in the sutta, the first, the setting in motion the wheel of Dharma, the first teaching of the Buddha, when he uh, describes and characterizes the middle way, he talks about a middle way between asceticism and sort of, self-abuse as a monk, like starving yourself and all that, and pleasure and just pleasure seeking. And that the middle way is, it doesn't go to either extreme, to chasing after pleasure or ascetic practices. But Joseph says another way to think about the ascetic side is when we are being, unkind to ourselves, when we are abusive in our own minds to ourselves, and that's another form of an extreme. Like we're not, in other words, you're not that bad, right? any one of us. We're not perfect, we're not saints, but we can get into these cycles of just judging ourselves and berating ourselves, and he's like, well, that's another extreme. That the other side of it is just inflating yourself, right? It's like, no, and so that's another way to think about the middle way. Am I really that bad, or am I really that great, just to find that balance and to check in with yourself. And so, where am I landing on that spectrum right now? So that, yeah, it is a really evergreen topic. So very nice to see everyone. I do plan to be here again next Tuesday. My wife needs to get on Zoom right at the time of the end of the class, so I might end it a minute or two early next week, but that's next week. Forget about it. I will see you then. I hope everyone is safe and sane and sober. Hey,
Thank you, Kevin.
okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
Get
Kevin.
sleep.
Everybody.
Get some
Thank you,
rest.
Thanks
Kevin.
for showing
Thank
up.
you so much. Safe
Yeah.
travels.
Okay.
Safe
Sleep.
travels.
Namaste.
Okay. Peace.
Thanks, Kevin.
Mike. Mickey. All right.
Thanks, Kevin.
3, 2, 1.
I know. Whoop.